So what's really cool is that Champion Pet Foods here is doing demonstrations during Global Pet Expo where they make a bag of Orijen. So because they use only human grade food, what they're doing is they're showing everything that goes into the food, which I think is really, really cool. It's very informative. So I'm excited to watch the demo. And for those of you at home that are tuning in right now, this is a great opportunity for you to see what actually goes into manufacturing the best dry food in the industry, which is Champion Pet Foods, the manufacturers of Orijen and Akana. So super stoked. Let's tune in and see what they have in store for us.
Is everybody ready to get started? Yes! All right, let's get started. So, to begin, first of all, my name is Michelle and this is Dawson. He's known as Brand X for the next 15 or 20 minutes or so. We're going to do a fun and quick little demonstration as to what truly goes into a bag of dog and cat food. So similar to a cooking show, we're going to show you cup by cup, ingredient by ingredient, what goes into making this 13-pound bag of Orijen Original versus a 13-pound bag of Brand X. And what is Brand X? Well, Brand X is a grain-free food that's typically found at pet specialty stores. And so while Orijen is a grain-free food, hopefully what you're going to realize by the end of the demonstration is that a biologically appropriate food is much different than grain-free. So throughout the demonstration, we're going to talk a little bit about the ingredients that we put in the food, how much we put into the food, and what you will see, again, is our foods are much different than what's on the shelf sold as grain-free. Okay, so really quick before we get started, why are we doing this and why is this important and why should it matter to you? Well, the reason why we're doing this is because you are pet specialists. And your role as a pet specialist is to educate and recommend to your customer. That's why they're shopping at your store, because of your unique products and because of your expertise. And so what we're hoping this demonstration will do is it'll give you a few tips, a few talking points to help you educate your customer in making the best choice for their dog or for their cat. All right, so let's begin. Let's get started. So I'm going to take a look at my recipe card that I have right here, and I'm going to start mixing up my ingredients, measuring them out. So my very first ingredient on my list here, it says deboned chicken. So I've got about 8 cups of deboned chicken that I'm going to add to my food. So I'm going to go ahead and add that. So one thing that you should know about my chicken here, that this ingredient is fresh. Comes from local suppliers, fresh. It's not just the muscle meat, it's also coming in whole prey ratios, so meaning that we're using the organs as well as the cartilage. And the beauty of this ingredient is you're supplementing through Mother Nature. But we're going to talk a little bit about that later. We're going to move on to Brand X and see what Dawson's first ingredient is in Brand X. What do you got, Dawson?
First off, I have 10 cups of deboned chicken.
So visually, obviously, you can see that these are two different ingredients. But on the ingredient panel, mine says deboned chicken and Dawson says deboned chicken. And that's the trick with pet foods today, is because not all ingredients are the same, even though it's labeled the same on a pet food. So deboned chicken can be fresh, like what you see in my mixing bowl. Deboned chicken can be raw. And it could also be this right here, like you see it in Brand X, which is 4 parts water, 1 part chicken. So clearly a difference here. Also too, what's important to know about Dawson's ingredient is this is just muscle meat. This doesn't include the whole prey ratio, so it's missing the advantage of supplementing through Mother Nature. All right, so let's look at my next recipe card here, or my next ingredient on my recipe, which is fresh turkey. So I'm gonna go ahead and add my fresh turkey to the mixing bowl. So I've got 5 cups of turkey. And just like my fresh chicken, this is whole prey ingredient. So you'll see that it's nice and rich and dark in color. That's because it includes also the organ meats and the cartilage as well too. Again, just like the chicken, this is coming from trusted local suppliers in Kentucky. Dawson, what's the next ingredient on your list?
Next up for Brand X is 6 cups of chicken and turkey meal.
So you'll see here that Dawson has just added in meals, and this is typically found in pet foods today, and they are conventional meals, and there's a few things that you need to know about these meals. First thing is that these meals have been cooked at a rendering plant. So a rendering plant What happens is they cook the ingredients at a really high temperature, usually 300 plus degrees Fahrenheit. And then once they've done cooking the ingredient, it goes back to brand X, and brand X, he's going to cook that again. So that ingredient has been cooked not once, but twice. So you lose a lot of the nutritional integrity of that ingredient. The second thing that you need to know about these conventional meals that are going into today's pet foods and what the animal actually is. So on today's pet foods, what you see on the bag is often fillets of salmon or rotisserie chickens. That's what you think is going into the pet foods. But what makes up that ingredient is primarily animal frame. So what happens is when an animal goes to slaughter, those cuts of meat, those go to the grocery store. And what's left over is the frame or the carcass of the animal. So you've got the bone as well as little bits of meat that's on the bone. And the disadvantage of that is that it's a pretty unbalanced ingredient. So what's best is actually using the whole animal. The third and final thing that you need to know about this ingredient is that oftentimes in North America, they're using meals that are category 2, meaning that they're not necessarily past fit for human consumption. So all the ingredients that go into Orijen are all 100% deemed fit for human consumption. All right, so now that we've got Dawson's ingredients in, we're going to move on to the next thing on my recipe card here, and it looks like I have nest-laid eggs. So I'm going to go ahead and add those ingredients. So I've got 1 cup of eggs to add here. These eggs are cage-free eggs. They are fresh. They come in whole, so we use everything except for the shell itself. And they also come from Kentucky farms. One thing to note about eggs as well too is it's the perfect amino acid profile. So this is the perfect protein source. Great ingredient. Dawson, do you have any eggs in your food?
I have a cup of dried eggs.
So obviously you'll see that there is a difference here. Dried eggs versus fresh whole eggs. So Dawson's dried eggs have been highly processed to get into a dry state. So again, you're compromising the nutritional integrity of that ingredient. Also important to note is that ingredient is also purchased through a broker, so meaning that you never really know where that ingredient is coming from. It's coming from unknown sources. So let's move on to the next item on my recipe card here. I've got a few different type of fish I'm going to add. I'm going to start off with mackerel, nice oily fish. I'm going to add that right here, so it's all blended up. Now this fish here, this comes from Norpel Fisheries, so this is Atlantic fish. Comes from Norpel Fisheries, it's all sustainably caught, and it comes to us whole. Incredible, beautiful ingredient. Dawson, do you have any more meat to add to your food?
No, Michelle. I'm out of meat on my side.
So no more meat on his end. Okay, so you know what? As I said, I've got a few different fish to add, so I'm going to add in my herring next. So herring is also incredibly rich in omega-3. If you check out a herring, it's actually quite dark in color, the meat's dark, and that's because it's loaded full of omega-3. So Dawson, are you sure you don't have any more meat to add or any fish to add?
No more meat.
Okay. So I'm going to add in my final fish ingredient. I've got a couple cups of flounder to add. Again, this is whole. So I just want to talk a little bit about the whole piece of this, because we are the only pet food company that I know of that is using the whole fish. So again, what is used typically in pet foods today is the rack. So the head, the tail, and the frame. And if you're wondering what that looks like, check out our fresh regional ingredient table here. So we've got that on display. So you're not getting the fillets in the food, we're using the whole fish. It's a more balanced ingredient. All right, so now that we've got in all of our fresh ingredients, I actually have one more ingredient to add that's meat ingredient. This one's important as well too. This is render-free dehydrated chicken, turkey, and mackerel. So I'm going to go ahead and add this. Now this is a dry ingredient, and you might think, oh, well, this is similar to the meals that Dawson maybe has just added. This is not. This is quite different. This is a unique ingredient. This has been custom made for us. Low temperature dehydration, 200 degrees Fahrenheit. And also we're including the whole animal, so we're using whole prey in this ingredient. So this is a beautiful ingredient, and what this does, this allows us to have a protein-rich food that fresh meat alone cannot supply. So Dawson, what do you got next?
Well, that's a lot more meat than we have over here at Brand X. I'm going to have to add something to my kibble to boost the protein levels. I'm going to add about 2 cups of pea protein.
Okay, so What Dawson has just added is typically found in a lot of pet foods today, even the ones that are on specialty store shelves. Pea protein, potato protein, plant protein isolate. So these ingredients, there's a couple things wrong with them. The first thing is they're missing a lot of essential amino acids. So things like taurine, you can't find that in a plant protein. The second problem with plant proteins is that they're not as bioavailable or not as usable. So what's best is meat coming from animal source. All right, so let's take a look and see what's next on our ingredient list. So we've got all of our meat ingredients added in. Here's the thing with kibble. In order to stick it together, you have to have some carbohydrate in it. So dogs and cats don't require any carbohydrate at all, but we are making kibble, so carbohydrate's the glue that keeps the kibble together. Do you have any carbs, Dawson?
Yes, I have some peas. And I also need to add some starch to my food to keep my kibble together. Here I'm going to add tapioca starch, potato starch, sweet potatoes, and potatoes.
Okay, so this is again commonly used in pet foods today, and these are the things you need to know about carbohydrates. The first thing that you need to consider is how much, and the second thing you need to consider is how fast. So the carbohydrates that Dawson has just added in here are extremely high on the glycemic index. Potato starch, tapioca starch, these are equivalent to a candy bar. And so what's important for a pet food is to ensure that you have low levels of carbohydrate. So in Orijen, we have 18% carbohydrate here. It's nice and low in carb. And the second thing that we've considered here is how fast. So what we're using in our food is a blend of low glycemic ingredients. So in here I have lentils, I have beans, I have chickpeas, and I also have a combination of fruits and vegetables in here. So things like pumpkin and butternut squash, these are fresh ingredients, some greens in there, apples and pears, nice and low on the glycemic index. So I'm going to go ahead and add this. And by the way, these fruits and vegetables, not only are they the glue that keeps our kibble together, but what's great about them as well too, they're a nice natural source of vitamins, minerals, as well as great source of soluble fibers. So Dawson, what's next on your list?
I have some fruits and vegetables as well, but I guess they're a little on the dry side though.
So again, obviously you saw the fruits and vegetables that I added. They are a fresh ingredient, they're grown locally. So the difference between mine and Dawson's is a dried ingredient that again is highly processed. And sorry to repeat myself, but the difference here is also too, his is a commodity-based ingredient. So you never really know where that ingredient is coming from. Ours is fresh and sourced out locally from trusted suppliers. Okay, so now that we've got our fruits and vegetables added in, what's next for you, Dawson?
Next up for brand X is flaxseed.
Okay, so flaxseed is commonly used in today's grain-free foods. You'll also see things like coconut oil. And the reason why pet food makers add these to their foods is because they're a source of omega-3. Now these botanicals, what they do for the foods is they are immunity boosters, they're digestive aids, they remove toxins from the body, and they help give dogs and cats an extra little boost. So it helps with overall well-being. Dawson, do you have any botanicals to add?
I've got one.
So again, the difference between Dawson's botanicals and my botanicals, Dawson's is a commodity-based ingredient. And what I love about Champion Pet Foods is no ingredient is too small to know where it's coming from. So botanicals oftentimes come from unknown sources. They're grown who knows where. Our botanicals are actually contract grown for us and grown locally. So even though it's a small component of our food, we know where these ingredients are coming from. So now that we've got all of our ingredients in here, it's time to do a bit of a check. We need to make sure that our foods are nice and balanced. So because of the amount of meat that I've added to my food, the amount of fresh meat, and the variety in whole prey ratios, my food's actually fairly balanced. So the only thing that I have to add is a little bit of zinc. So I'm going to add zinc in a couple different ways. I'm going to add a little bit of pumpkin seed. And also I'm going to supplement with just a touch of zinc. And actually, to be quite honest with you, this food is pretty balanced. We're only adding in the zinc mainly for regulations, for AFCO. So what about you, Dawson? Do you have any supplements to add? Is your food balanced?
Well, Michelle, I have a few more additives than you to ensure my food's nutritionally balanced. I need to add 16 different minerals, along with 13 different vitamins, and finally, 2 amino acids.
So this is common in pet foods today. So check out the ingredient panels on the foods that you're selling in your stores. Because most pet foods today, they don't have enough meat, they don't have enough variety of meats, they certainly aren't using whole prey. And so the benefit, again, of using a lot of meat and using a lot of variety is you are balancing your food naturally from Mother Nature. And in the case of most pet foods today, you've got to add in them. You've got to add supplements. So now that we've got all of our minerals added, I am done with adding my ingredients into my food, but I think Dawson's got one more. What do you have?
Yes, I still have one more ingredient to add. As you can probably tell, my ingredients are quite dry, and I can't make kibble out of this. Therefore, I'm going to need to add 8 cups of water.
So here's the thing. So again, because I have so much fresh meats in my food, I don't need to add water. So in order to make a pet food, you cannot put all those in dry ingredients through an extruder. It's not possible. So my foods are cooked in their own juices. So now that we've got all of our ingredients all mixed up here, we're going to have to use our imagination. So we didn't bring our kitchen equipment with us. So imagine the cooking process. So I've got all these beautiful ingredients. What a shame it would be to cook at a high temperature. So all of our foods at Champion Pet Foods are all cooked at a maximum of 200 degrees Fahrenheit. So low temperature cooking, slow cooking. In the case of Brand X and many pet foods today, cooked at a very high temperature, 300 plus Fahrenheit. So you lose a lot of the nutritional integrity of those ingredients when you blast it with heat. So what's the end results? Let's talk a little bit about the final product, because there's actually a story when it comes to taking a look at the kibble. So when you're at your store, you can actually show your customers what the kibble looks like and explain what makes a biologically appropriate kibble different, because it tells a story. So Lindsay's going to pass along these bowls here, so you can see the differences. Because when you compare these, it's clear that a biologically appropriate kibble versus Brand X or typical grain-free foods is quite different. The first thing that you're going to notice is that the kibble is much darker in color in origin. So why is that? Well, the foods are packed full of meat. The second thing that you're going to notice is Orijen's a little bit misshapen. And the reason why Orijen is a little bit misshapen is because it's so low in carbohydrate, it's hard to keep it together. And there's also so much fresh meat. So there's a real story there. When you take a look at the kibble too, you break it apart, there's also another story to tell. So if you break apart the Orijen kibble, it's quite dense. When you break apart typical grain-free foods, what you'll see is lots of little air pockets. It's similar to a slice of bread. You know, if you've got your slice of bread, you see all those little air pockets? That's starch. And that's what you're going to see in today's pet foods, packed full of carbohydrates, packed full of starch. So let's take it up to the top and go back to the beginning. How do you assess a food for a dog or for a cat? Well, we always say that when you're talking about dogs and cats, there's 3 simple questions you should ask. We call those meat math questions: how much, how fresh, and how many. So the first meat math question of how much meat. In Orijen here, you'll see we have 85% meat in our food. When you take a look at Brand X here has 35% meat. So big difference in how much meat. The second meat math question is how much fresh. Well, you saw all the fresh that I just added. 2/3 of this food is fresh. The other third is dry. When you take a look at how much fresh meats are in Brand X, this is typical of most pet foods, little to zero fresh. And how many? Well, you saw that I've added in chicken, I added in turkey, I added in fresh whole eggs. I added in 3 different types of fish in whole prey ratios versus the variety that's found here, no whole prey, chicken, turkey, and a bit of dried egg. So what does this mean for this food here? Well, this means that Orijen is much richer in protein, much lower in carbohydrate, and the food is supplemented naturally from Mother Nature. No need to add a whole bunch of additives to the food. And at the end, what that means is happy, healthy dogs. So again, why is this important, and why should this matter to you? What's your takeaway here? Well, hopefully what your takeaway here is this is going to help you to execute on your role as a pet specialist. So your work is to educate pet lovers. They're coming into your shops because you're experts. And so what we're hoping that we're doing here is giving you a few tips. to talk to your customers to help them make the best choices for their dogs and for their cats. All right, that's all I have today. Hopefully you enjoyed the presentation. It was insightful for you. Thanks for attending. So we're going to stick around here for a few minutes. If you have any questions, you're welcome to stick around. Next demo is at 3 o'clock, so if you loved it so much and you want to come back at 3, we'd be happy to see you.